One of the biggest yet most intriguing games of Week 2 takes place in New Orleans as SEC power and number 20 Ole Miss takes on the reigning Cotton Bowl champions and number 24 Tulane. Will the Rebels come in and exert their dominance, or will Tulane's magical run continue? That is the question that we're going to answer today as we break down everything you need to know about this matchup and, of course, share our official prediction. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad you could join us today, ready to break down the Rebels and the Green Wave. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 5 years. So if you want a guaranteed winning record, guaranteed winnings, and the best customer service any handicapper in the country can give you, this is the place for you. Go check it out and sign up for those picks today. Check out our Patreon account as well, exclusive content over there year-round, and send us some gear. We'd love to represent your team in every single Gridiron Expert video. We've already got some Tulane gear in our background. No Ole Miss gear, though. Can't do the helmet against each other if we don't have that. So check it out. We'd love to represent them as we continue to expand our GE Nation from coast to coast. So let's take a look at this game. I love this matchup, and I think, it's obviously a top 25 matchup. Only two top 25 games this week, this one, and then later on Saturday night we have Texas and Alabama. But I don't feel like people are talking about Tulane and Ole Miss nearly enough. I don't think people realize how good of a game this is and how special of a game this is. It's not every day, number one, that you see an SEC type of team or a Power 5 team travel to a Group of 5 opponent. That doesn't happen all that often. It definitely doesn't happen when the Group of 5 team is ranked and they're coming off a 12-win season where they won the Cotton Bowl over USC. So the stakes are very high in this game. It's a very intriguing and unique situation, and it's going to provide for some dang good football on Saturday afternoon. Take a look at the offense. We'll start with Ole Miss, the road team here. There's no doubt this offense is elite. There's no doubt that this offense is special, and it's going to be dang good because Lane Kiffin is their head coach. Last week against Mercer, they dropped 73 points and 667 yards. Now, again, it's just Mercer. Let's see how they do against a legitimate Tulane defense. But still, that's an impressive feat. And here's the scary thing about Ole Miss and all of that. 73 points, all of those yards, and they didn't even release one of the best running backs in the country in Quinshon Judkins. He only had 60 yards on the day. He didn't have that big of a day. And I don't know if that was more of just not having the biggest day on the ground, or if that Ole Miss was kind of saving him a little bit, limiting the workload before they let him loose in one of their biggest games of the year. Quinshon Judkins, I think, has a bigger day than he did against Mercer. You take a look at the quarterback position, though. Jackson Dart was phenomenal. 334 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, every single one of them going to Trey Harris. Trey Harris and Jordan Watkins each had over 100 reception yards in that game. This is an opportunity, guys, for Ole Miss to have an offense this year that was better than last year's, which is kind of hard to believe when they were averaging over 250 rushing yards per game and over 240 passing yards per game. They were balanced, they were explosive, they were fast, they were electric. And this year, you kind of see it being a bit of an opposite. The running game is still going to be a legitimate threat, but the passing game, which was just kind of mediocre at times last year, might take that major step forward thanks to a revamped wide receiver core and Jackson Dart having another year in this system. Ole Miss offensively is going to be very, very, very tough to stop. The good thing for Tulane is that their offense can hang with them. Tulane's offense can hang with Ole Miss. They beat South Alabama last week, a team that had 18 returning starters. It's a heavy favorite in the Sun Belt. Beat them 37-17. And Tulane's quarterback, Michael Pratt, was dang near perfect, going 14 for 15. Only one incompletion for 294 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's an unbelievable stat line. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you're playing. Going a full game with 1 incompletion and throwing for nearly 300 yards is insanely impressive. Tulane also tacked on 142 rushing yards as well in this game, and they've got some great wide receivers of their own. Yes, they lost a handful from last year's special 12-win season, but they got Jaquan Jackson. They've got Lawrence Keys III. Those guys stepped up big in their win against South Alabama and will have to do the same again if they want to continue to make Michael Pratt look good and if they want to have any chance to hang with Ole Miss and this offense. The biggest thing for Tulane, for me, looking at it right now, is I have faith in Michael Pratt. We know he can throw it. We know he's a great, accurate quarterback. And we know he's a bit of a dual threat capability as well. The run game has to step up. They've got to have somebody step up take over the load, and have a big day on the ground. We know Ole Miss is going to do it. Who can do it for Tulane? They've got to find a way to be multi-dimensional. If Tulane is only a pass-heavy team in this game, they cannot and will not beat Ole Miss. They have to have balance offensively. Rely more on the pass, play more through Michael Pratt, but you've got to have a viable option on the ground. If the ground game is non-existent, it could be a long day for Tulane. Take a look at the defense. Ole Miss, how good are they really? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Again, it's a very small sample size for everybody across the country, playing one game this year. I mean, you can't really base too much off of one game, especially when it was against a much more inferior opponent in Mercer. You look at, Ole Miss last year allowed over 25 points per game, 388 yards per game. Last week against Mercer allowed 235 total yards, including just 93 on the ground. They had 4 sacks, 11 tackles for a loss, and forced 3 turnovers. Pete Golding, in as the new defensive coordinator, coming in from Alabama, already kind of leaving his mark at Ole Miss, implementing his style, and it worked well against Mercer. Can it now work well against Tulane? This is an Ole Miss team that has a very strong back seven. That linebacking core and that secondary is extremely strong, and they've got to find a way to create pressure on Michael Pratt, not allow him to stay in the pocket and pick apart their secondary. A Tulane offensive line that has over 130 combined starts and 4 starters back. So that's kind of the battle I'm interested to look at here is how does Ole Miss defensive line, which I'm not going to say is the weakness of their defense, it's still extremely strong, but I like that back seven a little bit better. How does that defensive line try to break through that stout Tulane offensive line? Who can win that battle up front? And that's key in terms of creating pressure on Michael Pratt, but also for Tulane and creating running lanes for their running backs, which is key to their offensive success. So that's kind of the big question mark for Ole Miss right now defensively. They've got to find a way to go in there and set the tone early. This is going to be a loud, electric environment. And if Ole Miss walks in there kind of sleepwalking early or allows Tulane to get on the board early, make a couple big plays early, that doesn't take the crowd out of it. It just puts them in it even more. Tulane needs to go, or Ole Miss needs to go in there, shut that down real quick, make a statement early, silence that crowd and say, hey, we came to play. This is not going to go the way you think. Tulane, on the other hand, defensively, they, to me, have a tougher task than Ole Miss, right? I mean, Tulane's defense is up against one of the better offenses and better offensive minds in the entire country. We know the Ole Miss passing game is elite. We saw that last week against Mercer. We saw that last year when they averaged nearly 250 per game. We believe they'll continue to unleash Quinshon Judkins. He's going to have a massive day on the ground. He's going to get more carries and more work than he did last week against Mercer. But you look at Tulane's defense last week. They played a South Alabama team that, again, had 9 starters back on offense. A lot of preseason Sunbelt picks, first-team picks. Carter Bradley, one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. And Tulane held South Alabama to just 265 yards of offense, including just 190 through the air and only 75 on the ground. And that 75-yard rushing mark is pretty dang impressive. It's pretty dang good. And it should give Tulane some, I think encouragement heading into this game, saying if we can bottle up Quinshon Judkins, if we can hold Ole Miss in this rushing attack to the overall rushing attack to roughly 100 yards, that's a win. That's a massive win, and it will keep them in the game. But the one thing Tulane had going for them last week that they might not have going this week is the turnovers. Tulane forced 5 turnovers on the Jaguars last week, committed 3 of their own. That's got to be cleaned up, but that's another story. 5 turnovers, which is great, but can they do that again against Ole Miss, and can they capitalize off of those turnovers? Not sure that they'll even force that many, and if they do, I'm not sure if they can capitalize. Tulane, like Ole Miss, has to create pressure on the quarterback. They've got to kind of rattle this team, this Ole Miss team that's going to be playing in their first road game of the year, and it will be a tough road environment at that. A defensive line for Tulane, a strength of the team. Find a way to exploit Ole Miss's offensive line, again, which will bottle up the run game, prevent the run game from getting going, and maybe force Jackson Dart to stay as tall in the pocket, and maybe force him into a couple mistakes. That is what Tulane has to do. Do they have the defense to do it? 100%. Do they have the offense to hang with Ole Miss? 100%. But will they beat Ole Miss? That is the question. Unfortunately, I don't think they will. I think a lot of people would love to see this massive upset from Tulane, continuing their magical run And I'll tell you that I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people think. Let's keep in mind, I know it was last year, but a lot of players are back from this Tulane team. Their coach, Willie Fritz, is back from his Tulane team that won the American and won the Cotton Bowl. Tulane went on the road and beat Kansas State last year. Kansas State ultimately won the Big 12. They beat UCF in the American Championship game. UCF, one of the better offenses in that conference, and now one of the better offenses in the Big 12. Then they went to the Cotton Bowl and beat USC with Caleb Williams. Sure, he might have been banged up, but they still got that win. They are more than capable of pulling off this win against Ole Miss, especially on their home turf, and everybody on this team knows it and believes it. But ultimately, I think Ole Miss is just a little bit too much. The offense is too good, it's too fast, and this Ole Miss defense only needs to get a stop or two, whether that's just a plain stop and a punt or a couple turnovers, whatever it is, just enough to pull away, because I don't see the Tulane defense stopping this Ole Miss offense that often. Ole Miss won't blow them out by any means. I think this is a relatively high-scoring game, but the Rebels get the win. The offense has a big day. The defense comes through when they need them to, and the Rebels improve to 2-0, and Tulane takes their first loss since early November of last year. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including those expert picks, over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, our Patreon account for exclusive college football content year-round, and of course, send us some gear to our mailing address. We'd love to get your team represented in our background. We've got some Tulane. We need some Ole Miss. Hook us up. Again, our mailing address down in the description. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.